I grew up in a very supportive, loving family. So they're very, they understood, and they would smile when I wiped my hands a lot, because not to make fun of me, but they just knew that I was thinking about it. And, I think in life in general, people aren't very understanding, and that's okay. They don't, they don't mean to be mean or anything. They're not used to it. So, I think there's always this sense of, yeah, like self confidence became an issue at times because you're always like, okay, you always feel bad all the time when you gross people out. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like having hyperhidrosis impacted you and a music career? And if so, how?
Yeah, I remember my brother played guitar and I wanted to play bass. I played trombone at the time and I wanted to play bass, and I was probably like 8 or 9, and I remember asking the owner of the guitar store if having sweaty hands would ruin the bass. And they were like, no, no. I was like, am I going to get electrocuted? And they're like, no, no, no. And then I ended up playing bass and everything was great. But more recently, actually, after I got the surgery, I had my bass pickups replaced, and the guy was like, dude, this is all like corroded and everything. And normally I think I would feel really embarrassed, but after I got the surgery, I was like, well, I won't be a problem anymore. So I felt pretty good about that.
Absolutely. And when any instructors or like the owner of the guitar shop has made comments, has it felt like you were the first time that they've ever seen this, or did it feel like, oh, we've had this before?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have sweaty hands or talk about having sweaty hands, but to the level that I had it, I think it was kind of weird for people. I kind of got used to feeling a little bit vulnerable about being like, I have like really sweaty hands. Like, I'll like always apologize all the time for it, and that kind of sucks, but no, I don't have to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's something even in just day to day life when you interact with somebody and you say, oh, my hand's sweating, I'm sorry. And I would always get, my hand sweats too, it's fine. And I remember thinking that was so frustrating in the moment because I just knew that their hands didn't sweat like mine. And it
Hmm.
was so frustrating to try to get that point across of how excessively they actually sweat. I think a lot of people and the general population don't understand that your hands can sweat that bad.
Yeah, and always thinking that they think you're nervous or they think you're anxious, and it's not true that it's because you're anxious. Anxiety can make it worse, but I think sometimes I would just notice how in a new setting I'd be like, "Oh, my hands aren't sweating right now," and then I'd think, "Wait, no, no, they're starting to sweat. Dang it!" And it's just this constant like thinking about it, and it's really a distraction. And in moments that you need to be on your game too. You're trying to not be anxious, and you're trying to pay attention to your interview or being on stage or your lesson. Or I was teaching English for a little bit and showing people things, and I was a waiter too, and I had to reprint receipts one time because I was a big party and I was holding them in my fingers like this, and it took a while to kind of check everyone out. And then by the time I got to the table, I was like, I ruined all these receipts, and I'm busy, and this sucks. Like um, now I have to go back and reprint all this stuff just because I have sweaty hands right now. So it was definitely in the way.
Yeah, that is so frustrating. How long do you think after your surgery did it take for your mind to get to a spot where you weren't thinking about your hands anymore? Do you feel like it was immediate or did it just take time?
I think I was so excited. And that whole week after, I was like, is it gonna sweat? Or I was afraid. And not so I think something that I didn't expect is your hands aren't gonna be, once you get the surgery, your hands aren't gonna be bone dry forever. They sweat slightly, but it's like a normal amount. It's not ever gonna be dripping. It's just normal. And I thought I would, they're normal, and it's okay. So when that happened, I was like, oh no, is this happening? But it wasn't. It was hot out.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's dive a little deeper into that for somebody watching that's like, oh no, like, does that mean that it's not 100%? Or when do your hands get clammy? And there is a difference between having clammy hands and having sweaty hands. And like I was saying earlier, when I would tell people my hands were sweating and I knew that theirs weren't, I don't mean that their hands are bone dry. I mean, they probably did experience clammy hands, and I would
Hmm.
have given anything to just have clammy hands. And after surgery, it's not like they're so dry where you need lotion. They do get a little bit clammy. And can you talk about the situations that they might get a little clammy in?
Yeah, like, when it's hot out or you're nervous or something, just like everybody else, your hands get a little clammy, and that's not a problem, especially after having dripping hands. It's just as like that's fine, like it's not a big deal at all.
You just feel normal, which I always say that's all I wanted from surgery was to just feel normal, be able to sweat normally or not sweat like a normal
Hmm.
person wouldn't be sweating in a lot of the situations.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
talking about music and performing, let's dive into that and just talk about how that has changed for you before surgery and now after surgery.
Yeah, so I always remember wearing a long sleeve shirt so I could do this over the neck of the guitar as discreetly as possible. And it's never discreet, it's always noticeable. And then I would try to do it for the pickups too. And a couple times there was like some clicking with the water. They would like pick up on the pickups. It was a weird sound. And then I have this Spanish guitar, and the three top strings are nylon, so it would squeak when I went back and forth. And so I always was like, okay, I guess I can't play in front of anyone else. I can practice on this. So that's definitely limiting. So now I feel confident that I can play that guitar around other people without having to be like, yeah, it's because I have sweaty hands and it's squeaking. And, it's, you get sick of explaining it to people because it's just weird, and it feels like you're weird and different, and it becomes a part of your identity. And then when you have it lifted off, I remember driving back. I remember driving somewhere. I think it was a job interview after the surgery, and I just remember thinking like, I have nothing to be afraid of. I have nothing, like I can do anything I want. I can talk to people. I don't have to think about this anymore. And that it just felt like having the memory of dealing with that paired with not having that, I think it just like boosts your confidence so much more.
Absolutely, because you lived with it for so long and you had to go through life and had to be in positions where you had to push through the uncomfortable aspect of having hyperhidrosis. And so I agree, when that's lifted off, it's like, whoa, even if you thought you were confident before or not confident before, either way, it totally is just elevated after surgery.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what is there to be scared of now? Like, I don't have this big stressor. Even if I'm nervous in a situation, at least my hands aren't dripping sweat.
Yeah, and I've started to be a part of this comedy house, this improv community, and on stage I don't have to wipe my hands, and sometimes you're in a scene doing something crazy with someone and you're having to touch them or something, and I think before surgery, I would have been hesitant to touch, or I would have been uncomfortable if someone grabbed my hands and stuff. And I don't want to. I want to be a part of the scene and not think about it. So now it's not a thought in my mind that I have to hide my hands or anything.
Absolutely. After surgery, do you talk about the fact that you had hyperhidrosis? Does it ever get brought up, or do you just kind of live as if you didn't have it?
I barely ever talk about it, but I do bring it up sometimes. Like if it gets brought up, or if yeah, sometimes people remember that I had sweaty hands and I go, I don't anymore. And occasionally people talk about they heard about the surgery, and then I go, actually I got the surgery. And so everyone's very interested in the surgery because a lot more people have hyperhidrosis than I thought. I didn't grow up around anyone that had it, but as I got older, I started to meet more people that are thinking about the surgery. So it's cool to be a resource for people. Like doing this feels good. Occasionally, people have reached out on Instagram, and I remember asking people too, because before the surgery, you really want to make sure that this is what you want to do. And so I feel great about being as honest as possible about my experience because I would want that in their position too.
Yeah, it truly helps so many people. I remember for both of us before surgery, when you're the one in that position deciding if it's what you want to do to your body and if it's what's best, I watched every single video that they had because I just wanted to see everyone's different face and hear everyone's different story. You almost feel a sense of like, yes, another person that understands me. But then I would hear something from one interview that really resonated with me, whereas somebody else might resonate with something in a different interview. So, like, somebody watching this may really relate to you and playing guitar, whereas other interviews, people have different careers that they do. So, it's really cool to just be able to all come together and showcase that. Do
Yeah,
you
and also like
think
we're not like I'm not being paid or anything by anyone to say no, it doesn't have compensatory sweating, or like I was always worried that people were saying things because they were friendly with the Center for Hyperhidrosis or other organizations, and that's like the people that are doing this are happy, they're honest about how what happened, and I want people to know that too, that this is the people that you're interviewing are doing it as honestly as possible.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of people consider. On my calls with patients, I'm always saying, like, I do work for the center, but I would not be doing this if I wasn't so passionate about it because it truly changes your life. And that's
Hmm.
why everyone that I interview is more than happy to get on a video and talk about it. Because for me, I always say, I would give anything for somebody that's suffering with hyperhidrosis to experience what I get to experience every day. It is the
Hmm.
biggest blessing ever. And I know a lot of the patients have that same mentality where they're like, if I can just share my story, if that helps somebody get the confidence to go forward with this, or just know that they're not alone, then that is like the biggest reward ever.
Yeah, because you can watch video after video and read everything on the internet, but sometimes the most convincing is just to talk to somebody and who's had it and understand. I like watching this stuff from other people. It's like all these strangers on the Instagram page. I feel so connected with their stories because it's like, yeah, I've had that too, and it's I think this type of stuff is really helpful for me.
Yeah, when you were in that position deciding whether you wanted to have surgery, I know you said obviously the financial aspect is always a big component and deciding if you're actually going to be able to do this or not. How did that look for you? Let's go from when you had your consultation call with Dr. Basseri. What went through your head and what were your next steps?
Yeah, so we looked at insurance options, and the insurance that we had, we really tried, and they would not cover the surgery. And so that was tough. I felt pretty discouraged, and I didn't want. I felt bad for my family, but they were still very supportive, and we made. My parents are extremely generous, and we moved some stuff around, and I have a payment plan. I'm working on paying them back, but yeah, I think too, another conversation we had was, well, what if I, when I'm older, I save up money and then I get the surgery. We talked about that too, but that ended up being like, well, that's a lot more time of, I'm at the beginning, or I was at the beginning of my professional career, and being able to go into job interviews confident and network with people and shake people's hands, and all that stuff being lifted off now makes me just feel so much more confident in my career now at this kind of crucial time where you do have to start out and make connections. So I think the way that we did it, I'm very appreciative that it worked out that way, and it made sense in like a mental way, and I my self-confidence has really improved since then. You're kind of just, yeah, you're able to just see things much more relaxed. You're like, well, if I do that and my sweaty, like you don't have to think about anything anymore. It's just like being normal. It's like realizing that you're normal now.
The best feeling ever. Do you, I know you feel the confidence change within yourself, but have your parents or family friends, have they ever said anything about the change they've seen?
Yeah, my mom, she smiles sometimes when she thinks about kind of how I used to act. I think I always had this kind of like hang dog, like I was wiping my hands in my pants, and I think I've been working on my posture a little bit more and stuff. So I think it really made my parents very happy to see the changes they've noticed, I guess, in me. I think as time's gone on, I haven't really thought about it as much, but I definitely still think about it somewhat regularly, that I don't have to deal with that anymore. And it's a constant, it feels like a gift every day. I think it's an investment, just like college is an investment, but it's stuff that you just like college, and you take it with you forever, and it opens up doors. And I think this is the same thing. And it's more emotional though. It opens up doors in your relationships, in your mental health, in your career, in the things you do. It's kind of like everything that you do in your life is improved because of the surgery. So it was definitely worth it, and I do not regret it at all. So kind of amazed how quick the surgery was and non-invasive. Like I don't like have any scars on. I have like tiny little scars in my armpits, but they went in through my chest too, and there's nothing to. I cannot tell where it went in. And then their recovery time too, I was impressed with. I did not expect that. So we got to LA and we kind of tooled around the city or whatever. And then I had the surgery. And then the day I had the surgery, I kind of hung out at the hotel. And there was a moment where it was uncomfortable. It was, you just had surgery, so your body's adjusting to that for. But then by the end of the day, I felt pretty good. And then the next day, we went to Venice Beach and we hung out, and I felt just as normal as I had the day before surgery. And I was just kind of like amazed how good I felt like after getting. I'd never had surgery too, so that was a good experience.
Let's talk about that experience a little bit deeper. So you get to California. Where did you come from? Did you drive? Did you fly? And did you stay in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, so we flew. So I'm from the absolute opposite end of the country. So I grew up in New Hampshire, and so we flew out of Boston. And I don't think my family had been to LA before. I think my dad and I had gone for a Route 66 trip one time, but my mom and my brother hadn't been, so it was like a little family vacation in a way. So we stayed at the Beverly Terrace Hotel. It was like Sonder or something. It was pretty close to. Yeah, it was. I actually can't really remember, but yeah, it was. We were out and about all day, and we got some good food, and yeah, it was a good trip. We kind of drove by the Center for Hyperhidrosis just to see how far it was from the hotel. I remember, and then I had surgery pretty early in the morning, and also the day before, I was there and I kind of met everybody, and everyone was so nice. And if you had any questions, everyone put you at ease. It seems like everyone was a pro. Like they just do this all the time. So the only thing I was nervous about was I'd never had surgery. So I was like, what's that going to be like? I don't like being the center of attention. So when I'm uh, under the needle, it's like, oh, I don't like. But yeah. And then the next day, I woke up early and we went over there, and everyone was quick, and we got surgery. And then by lunchtime, I was at my hotel and we were hanging out. So it was really a lot more simple and straightforward than I thought it would be.
That's incredible. What was your immediate reaction when you woke up from anesthesia and your hands and underarms were dry?
I remember that I was like talking, but I was like not. I didn't really know what I was saying, and I was just like telling my parents like a story, and then I noticed that they were there, and I was like, oh, I guess surgery's over, and I just like felt my hands, and they felt dry. And my first thought was, well, maybe it's just because I had just had surgery. And when like sometimes you wake up in the morning and they're dry and then they just start like sweating like super hard. I was expecting that and like that tingly feeling you get. And then that did not happen. So I was like, yes, it worked. And so I felt really happy about that. And then just the whole rest of that week, I'm just constantly like, looking at my hands and feeling that they're not sweating, and I'm not feeling that tingling feeling that would happen right before they started to sweat. I don't know if you had that with your hands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some patients still have that after surgery for a little bit, the phantom sweating where they think they're going to sweat, but they don't. I only had that a couple times. I think some people have it more than others, but it's interesting. I think everyone's reaction when they wake up, some people, it sounds like you doubted it for a second. You were like, okay. And then once they stayed dry, you were like, wow, it actually worked. My instant reaction was like, oh my gosh, they're dry.
Yeah.
I didn't even like for a second. And I think it just like it's so interesting to see everybody's different reaction when they wake up and feel that. And some people are just in awe, like speechless. And then I was sobbing, and a lot of other patients are sobbing too, because it is life changing. It changes physically, but it changes mentally, emotionally, every single aspect of your life.
hmm Yeah, like even simple things like going to the gym. I remember I would wipe down the hand parts of the equipment, and it was like I was like afraid that someone would jump on the machine before I was able to wipe it down, and they'd be like, "Why is the handles wet and stuff?" And so now it's like I still wipe down the machines, but I don't like go for the handles first necessarily because it's
Yeah, it's not an
dry.
embarrassment anymore. Yeah, absolutely. That was something I always tried to go to the gym alone because I never wanted to be with somebody else where like we were sharing equipment. And I remember I had surgery scheduled and my dad and I went together, and you could just see my sweaty hand marks on the bars. And my dad was like, oh my God. Like, and he, he's my dad. He knows how bad it was. But I think it was so bad that it was just shocking. And I think that sums up living with hyperhidrosis. You have to really, somebody else has to see it to understand how crazy sweaty they are.
Yeah, and a lot of the people that love you and care about you, they're just surprised. And I think like you take it as like you're so embarrassed that you're just like, I don't want anyone to notice, you know? But they mean well and they care and they want you to not have to deal with it. But I think for people that don't have it, it is like kind of, yeah, surprising, like your dad noticing like your dad cares about you so much and you're getting the surgery, but still he's like, wow, that's sweaty, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So after surgery, obviously everything is wonderful and great, and you hear about compensatory sweating leading up to surgery. How has that impacted your life?
Yeah, so I that was the main thing I was concerned about before getting surgery, and I remember the center gave me a list of people to call and text. So I texted or called. I think I texted a couple people, and they were very helpful, and they responded, and they all said a similar thing. They said I do have slight compensatory sweating, and it only really happens though when it's hot out or a natural time that you would sweat. It's just a little bit more, and then it's about halfway down your back to your like kind of your waistline, and sometimes on your thighs and butt too. And but everyone said really similar things. And then I remember asking Dr. Basseri too about it, and he said also a very similar thing in a more kind of technical way. He explained that the nerves are like highways kinda, and I'm gonna explain this badly, but where they put the clamps, like the nerves below that, like overcompensate because they're just kind of used to that flow. So maybe that's not exactly accurate, but that's how I understood it at the time. Um, so I understand. I do. So now that I've had the surgery, I live in Florida now, so it's humid all the time. And I do, when you're wearing a backpack and you're walking around outside, that would happen anyways. When you're at the gym, it happens like a little bit more when it's hot out, but I think it's unlike my hands, it's very predictable and it's much less than, it's not like profuse sweating. It's just like slightly more sweating than you'd normally get in that area. So I do not regret the surgery. I don't. The compensatory sweating is not on my mind. It like my hands were. It's just like it's noticeable at times, but it's nothing that impacts my self confidence or anything.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It is totally different than hyperhidrosis, and while it still is a factor after surgery, you truly can't compare the two. Compensatory sweating after surgery, Dr. Passeri specifically, is definitely more on the side of just your typical normal sweating compared to a hyperhidrosis level of sweating. I can't think about it and make my back sweat. I'm not just sitting on the couch or sitting here and my back is sweating, whereas my hands would have been. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Situations like this, hands probably would have been really bad because you're talking about it. So it would have been awful. I mean, that's not how it is with compensatory sweating, which is the biggest blessing. You know when it's going to come and it's at a level where it really doesn't interfere with your tasks of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel this exactly like that. Yeah, it's not interfering with my tasks of the day. It's if it's hot out, I'm also like a naturally I sweat a little easier than I think most people do just in general. I think my whole family's like that. When I played sports, I remember my brother and I would sweat more maybe. But so for me, it might be worse than most people. Like some people might really not notice it at all. I barely notice it, and I do sweat a lot. So everything everyone said to me, Dr. Basseri and everyone, was super accurate. And yeah, I would say the exact same things that they would say if I was asked.
Yeah, and do you think that's what ultimately made you confident going forward with the surgery, just talking to people and researching?
Yeah, I think when you talk to people that have had it, they're happy with the surgery and they're honest. And I think talking to people that are not, I think also Dr. Basseri had a very, he just described it in a way that made me confident too. Um, and everyone I talked to, the way that they described it was just felt genuine, and it was. I experienced the exact same thing, and it's nice to talk with people versus sometimes just look things up, because the internet could, try to sell you stuff sometimes, and to just talk to someone that's not doesn't have a motive for that makes you more confident, or made me more confident.
Absolutely. And if somebody is watching this right now and they were in the position you were in where they're doing the research, maybe they haven't had a call with Dr. Basseri yet, they're just deciding if this is what they may want to do, what would your advice be to them?
Yeah, it's so, like, for everyone, there's different factors. Sometimes, like, financial, or everyone's in a different position. So if someone is in the position to do it, like, like I'm grateful enough to have been made it work with my family. It really does. It changes like everything in a good way. Like, there's no downsides in my experience, and from people that I've seen on the Instagram and stuff. I would get the surgery if you were deciding now or later. If you were able to do it now, I would do it now, because it just so much, you just get so much more confident, and you just feel like you can be yourself. The part of you that's defeatist, for me anyways, it kind of goes away. You remember it, but you realize that you're not that person anymore. And I think there's things too, like, you can always change. Like, I'm always late, so I'm gonna get more sleep and get there on time. And then there's things that you can't change. And I thought that this was something that I can't change. We live in a time where there is a resource to fix that, and that's so amazing. That something that you couldn't change maybe 20 or 25 years ago, you can now with limited compensatory sweating at this level. So I think it's amazing that this exists, and it's helping so many people out with their entire everyday lives.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And to wrap up, what has been just your proudest change that you've seen in yourself or your favorite moment since surgery?
I think when just shaking hands, I'm like, yeah, like I'm not afraid of it anymore. High fives, everything. I think, yeah, playing music on stage is nice. It's just I can focus on connecting with the band, and not keep getting distracted with, all right, after this song I'm going to wipe it and then I'm going to jump back in. And yeah, I'm always proud of my hands now. Everything that I do, I'm proud to not have sweaty hands.
That's wonderful. And I'm so excited for you. And just imagine all of the things you'll get to do as life continues and not have to think about your sweaty hands anymore. So, thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Yeah, thank you.